We're back. Episode 2 of Heat Check. I'm trying to do one of these every single week. Unfortunately, this one has been delayed due to me having to watch Steph Curry go absolutely ballistic on the Oklahoma City Thunder. But we're back and ready to rock. Here's how Heat Check works. I'm going to identify one NBA draft prospect and grade what I believe to be their 5 most generally important skills: scoring, defense, passing and playmaking, athleticism, and overall feel. Since no two prospects are alike, I'll grade a few additional areas specific to that player deemed the swing skills. Each skill will be graded on the Heat Check chart with ranges from cold all the way to scorching. When that's all said and done, I'll divvy out one final score that will have absolutely no bearing or real-world effect on said player whatsoever. Next up in the Heat Check series is Duke big man Kyle Filipowski. He is a freshman 7-footer currently making his mark for the Blue Devils. He's a big-bodied floor spacer averaging 15.7 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 1.4 assists per game. Those are good counting stats, but the efficiency, 43, 29, 78, is a little scary. He'll be 19 on draft night. He was a consensus top 7 recruit out of the 2022 high school class. 24/7 Sports had him at 4, Rivals at 5, and ESPN at 7. Let's start out with Filipowski's athleticism. Nearly everything that's going to be talked about in this video is relative to the fact that he's a 7-footer. So just because I'm giving him a cool grade for athleticism, it isn't damning. Almost zero 7-footers are explosive or athletic, and Flip is no exception. But there is a caveat. He doesn't have any crazy vertical pop or acceleration, but what he does have is some shiftiness and fluidity that is not often seen in guys his size. So overall, it evens out. I'm feeling warm on Flip's scoring. Averaging over 15 points per game as a freshman for a blue blood school, it's probably his most coveted attribute. That being said, he's still got plenty of work to do in this area. Surface level, there's a lot of good stuff that comes with Filipowski's scoring. At his size, he's got a pretty creative handle that most big men just don't have. His handle and mobility at his size are the selling point. It could be argued that everything else can be worked around that. He's also got way more touch from outside than your average 7-footer, and he's even shown some promising stuff in the in-between game. But the efficiency just hasn't been there, and to me, it is fairly concerning. He's shooting 55% around the rim, 27% on jumpers, and just 28% on catch-and-shoot shots. At the moment, it feels like a lot of bark, no bite. A few key things that need to see improvement for him to make it in the NBA. He isn't a force yet on the interior. There's of course times he can go get you a bucket inside, but he is far from dominant there. There's a yin and yang to the interior and perimeter for scoring bigs in the NBA, and it feels like Filipowski can get there, but he just hasn't maximized either yet. On the same note, finishing through contact will be a big one, especially after taking a leap to the much tougher NBA. But overall, the bones of what he can be as a scorer are there, and it's tantalizing. Defensively, I'm feeling cool on Flip. It's just not his selling point. He's got that positional mobility we just talked about, but that just doesn't translate to defending the rim at a high level, which lots of teams are looking for right now. He's not a terrible defender by any means. He can hold his own against plenty of talented players, and at times he's flashed the ability to succeed on switches against fast, athletic guards, but I think overall there's just more of the bad than good. Some of it will come with time, but his footwork just isn't amazing, he's not a crazy athlete, and I just struggle seeing him as an impact defender in the NBA. And if he's not scoring at a high level, and he's not defending at a high level, being in that middle ground is really scary for a big man. Passing, not so much playmaking, is one skill that I feel has been a little underrated with Flip. He has 29 assists to 59 turnovers on the year. Yes, definitely not great, and turnovers are indeed an issue. But while diving into his game, his passing just feels a little better to me than the numbers indicate. I think he's shown the ability to make some fairly advanced passes, especially in getting the ball to weak side scorers. The ability feels there, it just feels like it needs some fleshing out and cleaning up, similar to lots of things in Flip's game that one day we might just chalk up to being a freshman in a whole new environment. Overall feel, this is the one that isn't really quantifiable with stats, more just how I think they feel, assess, and react to the overall game of basketball. I'm feeling warm on Flip's feel for the game. Similar to nearly everything else, it's pretty good for his size, but there's also times he looks a little stiff, a little rigid out there, and just can't process the game as fast as others. He's not some reactive, high-feel 7-footer like Chet Holmgren or Victor Wembanyama, but he's not a robot out there either. The good news is that most centers don't need to have that innate feel, and they can play within the simplicity of their situations, but it doesn't bode well for eventual star power not having it. I am only going to cover one swing skill today because Filipowski's shooting is far and away his number one swing skill, and it's not particularly close. It's the thing that can catapult players into stardom or, in several others' cases, keep them out of the draft entirely. In Filipowski's case, it's kind of kept him in that middling level. We could talk all day about his certain flaws, but if he can shoot the ball with a 7-foot frame, he's going to have a job in the NBA. He got off to a really hot start shooting the ball. In his first 8 games, he was shooting 36% on over 4 attempts per game. That's a really respectable number for someone of his size and stature. That number has taken a huge dip, however. In his last 12 games, a much larger sample size, he's making just 23% of his 3.3 attempts, leaving him around 28% on 4 attempts so far this season. 67 of his 73 attempts so far have been catch and shoot, so he's not really generating much for himself on the outside, despite having some of the capability to do so, at least it seems that way. There's a lot to unpack here regarding his potential as a shooter. The numbers are shaky, but if there's reason to believe that those can improve with time, it drastically raises his ceiling as a prospect. Like I said, if you can shoot, you can have a job in the NBA. Firstly, the mechanics, to me, are really workable. They feel natural and fluid, and it could stand to speed up, but he'll never be at the point where they're asking him to stop shooting. The free throw numbers are also really good with solid volume, usually a decent indicator of outside potential. Using Cerebro Sports, a sports analytics database that does great work, I will link them in the description, through 6 events tracked from high school all the way to college in which he actually attempted a 3, Flip has averaged a 3 PE rating, a rating used to track 3-point efficiency, of 75, which is well above players of his size and position. I think he mostly takes good shots, again due to the simplicity of the center role and play design, and I think that's going to be a similar case in the NBA, so that's not something I'm really worried about. All this to say, based on what I have seen and what I've dove into, I think there's plenty enough evidence to think the outside shot improves. He might not ever get to 40% in the NBA, but I think he can be a really respectable stretch big. Alright, time for the grade. Based on what I have seen from Filipowski so far this season, I have him graded as a 7.2 out of 10. Flip is skilled, he was a highly touted prospect and has a ton of upside in key NBA areas, but it just hasn't translated as much to real production as I would have liked. That being said, I think he still projects to be a pretty valuable role player in the NBA, and I have him in the 20 to 25 draft range. He's certainly worthy of a first-round pick, and I think talent-wise, he's closer to the lottery than he is a second-rounder. There's essentially 2 camps on a player like Flip. One that trusts the innate skills and thinks the production will come along because of that, or those that won't care if the production isn't there to begin with. Ultimately, I don't know that I would take the risk, but I can certainly see the case for why others would. Filipowski feels like a tough puzzle that's still being pieced together. There's a chance it never gets done and you're not left with much, but if you do complete it, you've really got something. That is it for this one. Let me know how you feel about Flip, a really intriguing NBA draft prospect. Let me know who you want to see on the next heat check, and that's it.
3, 2, 1.